But today I want to share some things that I've been writing this week. Because what I realize, and it's a little scary, is that we've just started leading in the second quarter of the 21st century. And we're actually 8 months in. And I think one of the reasons we come here is to renew hope, but also just to kind of think a little bit bigger again. I finished school in the year 2000. It's a shame our student colleagues have left because, I didn't hold phones and stuff back then. I mean, I held a phone, but it was a shared Nokia phone that my brother and I shared, and whoever was going out on a Saturday, Mum would give it to one of us to take. Do you remember those days? And what's crazy now is none of the students that we teach and none of the teachers under 30 kind of were either alive or remember this moment. Does anyone else just find that just off-putting? And I'm like, it's Kathy Freeman, and she's holding the thing, and she's lighting it, and we're crying, and there's all this pressure, and they're like, what? But I want you to think educationally, that 25 years since I finished school and been an educator and other things, other than COVID, what has been the number one impact on the work that we do? As I think about this, I think it's got to be this. In fact, things were still pretty stable all the way through to about 2015. Then once we started rolling these out, not just for people in work, the BlackBerry, what we called the Crackberry for a while, but rolling out the smartphone, and then we added to the smartphone the social media, which wasn't that bad actually. Then we added to the smartphone social media the algorithm that was all about putting the smartest engineers in the world against one problem: how to get the human mind to come back to the screen. For some, you're losing that battle even now. And so as we think about it, who agrees that this has probably had the biggest impact on the work that we do? And look, I don't want to cover the ground that the incredible social psychologist Jonathan Haidt has done probably the biggest favour to any of us. My first degree is psychology, and I look at him as one of the best public intellectuals in the world. Who's read The Anxious Generation? And he talks, of course, about his argument, correlational, increasingly causal, where he's actually saying, look, actually, as far as well-being, suicide, these other things, these things have been terrible. But now he's saying, I missed the big story. It was actually the fragmentation of attention. Now, I can tell you, as someone with a psychology degree, there is no difference between the attention of the young people we're having here and your attention, at least their capability, but it's been conditioned in such a way for constant, ongoing fragmentation. Who struggles with some of their students who come back after a couple of weeks of holidays and mum and dad basically just let them be on the screen for the last few days? And that sense of conditioning, that difficulty of sustaining time. Who struggles with a teenager at home, just getting them to focus? But we've been kind of winning some of this war back. In my home state of New South Wales, we've started to realise that actually, yes, phones are inevitable, and I wish our young people were still here because I wanted to test these arguments and see how wrong I am. But actually, when we let the technologists run the show and said, well, they're going to be inevitable, bring them into school, and then we'll just teach them how to use it well, it's been an utter disaster. And actually, the number one effect size, as far as any simple intervention you can run at any level of schooling, is no phones between the bells. Who's found this? A dramatic uplift in not just the quality of learning and concentration, but much more about the eye contact and serve and return of the human relationships. And the international studies say the same. Like in Holland, we're seeing absolutely lifts in concentration, other elements. And I was starting to get excited, to be honest. I was like, good, we got rid of the phones. Students actually say, please take them off us. I won't not use it unless you take it off us. And I love school when I don't have to manage that. Bit by bit, we're starting to fight back on these areas as well for human development and starting to actually let the educationalists and the psychologists talk about human development. And then this all started to happen. Who's finding it hard to keep up with this? I made a commitment a few years ago that I wasn't going to talk about AI in keynotes because I just thought it was totally vacuous. And did you remember those conferences for a while where it was just everything was keynote on AI and it was just someone else saying, I typed this into ChatGPT, this is what it did? But about a week or two ago, as a father of three, an 11-year-old, a 9-year-old, and 7-year-old, I started to realize that actually as we lead this start of the second quarter of this century, there's a fundamental set of shifts here that we as educators need to get our head around, and I actually think we need to seriously think about how we're going to respond to it in the next few years. So we were told for a number of years, predict the future. Anyone remember when we should do less of other core curriculum and do coding because all the jobs were in coding? Remember that? I love this one in the US. A coding student complaining on TikTok that the only person to write back to all of the applications she put in was Chipotle. Chipotle is a great Mexican takeaway restaurant. It's the most recent data. They're calling the US tech job postings have gone from boom to bust. where it's so funny that actually the technologists that were going to create the technology that, remember, was going to replace all the taxi drivers, they actually just replaced themselves first. Because the number one thing that ChatGPT and Claude are very good at is coding. So I'm sitting here thinking, how do I help a group of educators who are trying to lead through an age of acceleration where you cannot keep up with the quick shifts? How do you lead an institution during that time? I remember back in 2004, all my high school friends were turning 21. Did anyone chip in for presents, for 21's birthday presents? Remember this? And you're like, I can either give you $50, but what if we all put in $50 so we can get something? Well, one of my mates, Jono, I thought I'm going to get him an outstanding thing he's going to love forever, a Palm Pilot. We all chipped in, he opened it up, and I think he saw it as a little bit of like, yeah, you're always disorganized, mate. Maybe had a little stylus. Did anyone have a Palm Pilot? And we all chipped in. And then, of course, about 2 or 3 years later, the iPhone came out, and I don't think that Palm Pilot has ever seen any more use. My friends chipped in, and 4 key friends bought 4 pewter mugs. I was like, yeah, thanks, guys. Worse than that, they wrote their names on them. I got 4 pewter mugs, including one with my own name, and I was like, thanks, guys, put that down. I got you a freaking Palm Pilot. Guess what I got to do with my high school friends a couple of weeks ago? Just have a drink out of those pewter mugs. You see, when I think about leading into the next few years, you're going to put a lot of technologists on platforms, educational futurists, who have absolutely no idea, but they're kind of vacuous predictions. And all I would say is those vacuous predictions are at least some areas where you'll know it definitely won't turn out like that. So how do you lead? When I was fortunate to be in Cambridge for my doctoral studies, there were times we could go to live lectures with some incredible intellectuals, and I remember sneaking into the back of a lecture with Nassim Taleb, the author of Black Swan and Anti-Fragile. And this guy who's meant to be great at understanding complexity, someone put up his hand and said, Nassim, how do you predict the future? And he said back, hey, do you think a spoon is going to be around in 2030? And the kid, this is about in 2011, said, yeah, I think so. He goes, why is that? Well, I said, because the spoon has been around for a very long time. It's been very useful. And he said, actually, one of the ways to predict the future is not actually about predicting what will happen. It's about saying, what are the things that have been useful for the longest time? And actually, that's highly predictive of the things that are going to be useful for the longer time. Don't think Palm Pilots, think pewter mugs. He said, do you think a bicycle is going to be around in 2050? What do you think? Yes or no? Give me a Dylan. Yes? No? All right, beautiful. Random sampling. Okay, here we go. Colleagues, as I was thinking about what I wanted to bring to you today, I want to say this. The world is speeding up. It's doing it in such a way that I really wish I had have snuck my kids' adolescence through a decade earlier. How do great educational leaders of systems, of countries, of schools lead? Funny enough, I've been convinced that the best way to lead in this age of acceleration is to double down on the things that have mattered for the longest time. And what I want to share is, literally, I was writing this on Monday, and my friend Rebecca in the room knows because I called her on Monday afternoon and I said, I'm thinking about doing something else. She goes, send it through to me. I said, I can't send it through. It's mostly in my head. But I reckon I want to share 3 quick shifts that I'm seeing. I'm going to call these corrosive shifts to human flourishing. And I want to talk about 3 humanizing roles of schools that are actually, as leaders, going to give you confidence that whilst we don't know what's coming, I actually think we already have the antidote within our Catholic schools to respond to these shifts. So let's get into the first one. It's what I'm calling cognitive offloading. Now, I wish our young people were still here because I want to make a case to them that actually just because AI is everywhere and just because AI is very, very good for the productive purposes of getting jobs done, it is quite useless and in fact often detrimental to the pedagogical practices that result in learning. Cognitive offloading is being done for a long time. Anyone know about early onset midlife? Anyone know how to tell a male's going into midlife? Well, there's 2 things. One is they're always talking about their weather app. Who's with me? And they'll literally look up at the sunny sky and they go, it's not meant to be like this. The second thing is they start getting into ancient history late. I was in London, and now, as you know, midlife, now rather than thinking which pub I want to go to, I want to rush to the Mesopotamian area of the British Museum. And you can go and you can look at the earliest forms of cognitive offloading. Cuneiform tablets where the Sumerians were just starting to map out, you owe me money and you took this much wheat from me. When humans firstly started to encode the written code, so the oral code, and encode it into what we then created as writing was a cognitive offloading rather than like, you owe me this and you owe me this and you owe me this. We actually found a way to get it down. And bit by bit, we found other ways to do calculation, whether it's the abacus or the calculator. Who has to run a to-do list? Otherwise, you're always thinking. And even Google that came out when, I was finishing up high school, there was this sense of like, wow, I don't have to hold everything. I can go and find it and search for it. And the real question, and the thing for our young colleagues here is to ask, is AI just another one of these? And I want to say it's very different. Hey, who's ever used AI to write an email that you've been avoiding? You know that email that's been hanging there and it goes over the 48-hour use by date, and then you're like, oh, I really need, and then you don't do it this week, and you go, I'll do it on Monday. Have you ever opened your inbox? I've even held my hand there and go, I don't want to see that email there because it makes me feel bad. Has anyone used AI to help craft an email to a challenging response? Yeah, it's pretty good, isn't it? Hey, would you craft a love poem with it? I mean, a friend of mine did this. He was running short of time, put some conditions in a ChatGPT 4, got it to write it for his wife, and he wrote it into a card, and she started crying. She thought it was beautiful. 2 days later, he told her that it was a fake, and it's been a net negative for their relationship. Why is that? I wonder, yeah, stupid. I wonder what's the most trivial thing you've shared, or what's the most important thing you've used ChatGPT. Can you just turn to someone nearby and just, come off the screen and come up into the face? Just share. What's something trivial or serious that you've done on ChatGPT? Go for it. Zone of silence, by the way. You can't tell anyone else about this. What I need you to understand, and if I was speaking to your students, and as a former high school teacher, and I was a Year 12 coordinator with 220 students, and I know that they would be asking, hey, this is just going to be around, we've got to get used to using it. But here's what we as educators need to understand. For the first time, you're not just cognitively outsourcing memory. You're not just cognitively outsourcing processing. You are now cognitively outsourcing the very processes of thinking. Ideation, redrafting, summarizing, planning, structuring, coding. What did we hear from Dylan yesterday in his big number one ideas? Some of the core foundational ideas, which is actually learning is a change in long-term memory. And as Daniel Willingham would tell us, learning is the residue of thinking, or memory is the residue of thinking. You don't get any memory, you don't get any long-term schema formation, you don't get mental model formation without a huge amount of thinking. And each of these processes is how, during the educational processes that you and I went through, we learnt to think. How do you learn to generate ideas? The nonsense vacuous stuff that I hear at conference is something like, we don't need engineers anymore, we need prompt engineers. And I see work plans coming out where a 7-year-old kid will say, well, let's start a writing process. The first thing we're going to do is generate some ideas. And we don't sit around and get them to do the cognitive process of retrieval, go into their mind, connect different things that they might know, and actually generate an idea. They learn to ask ChatGPT for 6 or 7 ideas that could be a good starting point. Now, I'm okay with you doing that. You do it. You do all the cognitive offloading you need to do in your job to survive because you already have well-formed mental models with background knowledge. But how dare we do it to those who haven't yet formed their own sense of self or mind or thought? Oh no, we stage it out, say the lesson plans. We do a little bit of time on ideation, then we do some drafting, then we get it to do the drafting. All of that was the learning process. The desirable difficulties that Dylan talked about yesterday from Bjork and Bjork talks about that unless you do retrieval, space retrieval, unless you do hard things, there is no residue of the work. You see, when we all started to teach, the output was good evidence of the learning. If I got a good essay, if I got a good assignment, that was a pretty good proxy for one of two things. Either the kid had done some work or they had a really involved parent. But if I got that decent response, I could extrapolate from that. This kid has learned how to think. She's got an argument. She's crafted that together. It's taken her a few iterations. The products of assignments now are not correlated at all with what you can infer about what learning has occurred for that student. So what do we do? Hey, can I just, loud and proud, who takes the escalators? Go on. Escalators or stairs? Who takes the escalators? Hands up high and proud. And who takes the stairs, but when they do it, they make sure they beat someone on the escalators? You're like... Because you've learned, I do hard things. Now, I do this all the time in airports, and I'll even pick something up, just like to rub it in. Then at the top, I'm like... But what's the limit? Like, would you take the escalator, a little airport thing like this? What about in Tokyo or London, when you look up this, like... Writing an essay at 14 is like a Tokyo subway set of escalators or stairs. Do you really think any actual switched-on 14 or 15-year-old or 7-year-old will ever take the stairs by choice? And when people break it up and say, oh, no, you don't understand. We did some ideation here and then we did some this. Yeah, you got them to take the escalator here and then walk across. Just when it was hard, got them to take the escalator here. And teachers are proud at the output. They've never seen such great output, and that output has never meant less about what has been learnt. AI-infused classrooms will be the fastest route to a set of school graduates who do not know what they think. The best way to learn how to use AI is to not use it for learning during your developmental phases, such that you can use it as well as I can use it, because I have been fully formed first. Bringing ChatGPT to complete assignments is like bringing a forklift into the weight room. You will never improve your cognitive fitness that way. And at every point, my brain wants to jump to ChatGPT as quickly as possible, because thinking is hard. Now, I want to say that the evidence is in. This isn't just me rocking on as an elder millennial getting grumpy at the next generation. MIT has done a series of studies tracking people as they've used ChatGPT over time. ChatGPT users had the lowest brain engagement, consistently underperformed at neural, linguistic, and behavioural levels over a period of time. We've got to take the stairs. A group of doctors were studied over time using AI to make judgments around cancer diagnosis. This study in The Lancet showed that over time, doctors who were using it more became less skilled. Has anyone got a fancy car that does lane assist? Does anyone have a car that basically parks themselves? Like, do you ever think your 16-year-old learning how to drive will never have that experience of being on a road with cars behind you and having to slot like a reverse park with 3 of your mates in the car, someone honking behind, because they're just going to go, oh yeah, it's all sorted out. Now, maybe for car driving, it doesn't matter. Maybe they'll never have to actually worry. It's just a performance task. But what I heard from the Archbishop and the minister yesterday was that you were interested in formation. So my first antidote to this shift, and the one that we're spending a bit longer on, is that in an age of cognitive offloading, schools need to be literally sanctuaries of human thought. When a kid comes in, they go, thank heavens the adults are in the room. Because even if I've got my phone there, I can't help but look at it, just like you all and me. And when I come in, I'm engaged in learning how to think. Now, some people say, why bother learning how to write, Simon? ChatGPT can write better than me. Yeah, it can. It can write better than me too. And even some of our wonderful English literature kind of graduates here are starting to go, oh, this is almost better than me. But I want to say the 2 enduring practices, the 2 pewter mugs for this, is to learn how to write and learn how to speak. Writing, 5,000 years old. Rhetoric, at least 2,000 to 3,000 years if we go to the Greeks and the Romans. And I'd say to my colleague in the middle here, I'd say, I get it. Trust me, I can speak 3 times quicker than I can write too. Let's focus on the rhetoric there. But I don't want to rule out the writing. Not because your writing needs to be perfect, but because unless you're actually writing, you may not actually be thinking. Has anyone spoken something and someone says, that's really good, you should write it up? And you go, yeah, I will. And then you're like, oh my goodness, that didn't even make sense. Daisy Christodoulou in the UK has helped me understand this. She wrote a great blog, and all my references and quotes you can take away and have a look at. She said, generative AI might already be a better writer than you in terms of being able to quickly draft readable and error-free texts. That's already true. But is it better than you at working out what you actually think? I want our school graduates to know what they think. Writing is a process of learning what you think. And no LLM can be better at you than you at working out what you think. Unless, of course, you're going to hand over all of your graduates to think the average of what that model predicts is the next most important word. And the only ideas that they can generate is what their prompt engineering generates. The only drafting and redrafting that they can do is what the LLM does. I asked Dylan about this last night over a beer, and he said to me, there's some of the stuff I wrote that I had to step away from for 2 years before it was ready. There were things that he and Paul Black fought about for years in a tussle back and forth. ChatGPT could have summarized it the next day and got it in a publishable form, but it wasn't the work that then has been the foundation of his career for the last 20 years. Sometimes things take time. Writing and rhetoric are the things that we as humans have found to be the foundational ways to learn how to think and to learn to work out what we think. And I think they're really good bets in the coming 3 years, and much, much better bets than AI-infused classrooms. If you want to work against cognitive offloading, then you need to set up sanctuaries of human thinking. Just because you as a fully formed adult with deep, strong schema and mental models can use AI for productive purposes, don't rule out that those that haven't yet done that formation deserve the opportunity to learn to think and to learn what they think. Well, the second thing here is engineered intimacy, and this is a really interesting one. Hey, does anyone notice this at bus stops and just go, oh, it's so sad? Like you walk past, like, I don't know about what you did at bus stops. I would be like, you'd turn up and you're like, hey mate, how are you? You sort of stand there and then you're like, well, this is weird. Like we have nothing in common other than we're on the same bus route. Does anyone got like a lifelong friend just because the same bus route, tram route, some other stop? The author Arthur Brooks calls this a useless friend. Bear with me. He says at school is the one time you get to build friendships, not because you are something, not because you could be aligned with someone, not because you could help someone, just because you did life together. I don't know, now that I'm 42, I talk to other people and they say, you know what I really love doing, like coming out of the hole of kind of late 30s? I go, what? Like, just reconnecting with my school friends. It's weird, we're so different, we do different stuff. There's actually, like, we're not like, oh, we're all into the same stuff, so we've chosen to be friends. It's just, we did formative life together. Who looks at restaurants and just goes, are you serious? And then you write me an email about what are we doing to help the attention of my kids? But here's the danger. And I love that panel. It couldn't have been a better setup for this raw kind of conversation I wanted to have. What do students keep talking about? Relationships, connection, 8 minutes. Wasn't that a great phrase? 8 minutes. Because they're not getting it in the family unit. And they're not getting it at the bus stop. One 13-year-old said to me, my dad's being a real pain in the ass. He won't let me have an iPhone and AirPods. And he actually agreed. He'd rather read a book, but he just wanted AirPods that he promised his dad he wasn't going to connect to anything, just so he didn't feel weird when other people looked up. It's like, what are you looking at? What are our young people going to do with those deep human needs to be connected and belong and seen? And I can tell you what they're starting to do. They're starting to go for engineered intimacy. Harvard Business Review put out their most recent update about the most common uses of AI. It's moved from productivity in 2024 to therapy and companionship. If you want to know what people are typing in to ChatGPT, it's these top things. Therapy and companionship, organize my life, and I understand that one. Purpose of life. Now, the great challenge for the school is that ChatGPT is now absolutely incentivized, or any other type of AI, to keep you as close as possible. Has anyone used it before and sort of like, this is so positive? Anyone like, it's always you put something in and it's like, great work, first draft. And then you say, oh, I'm not sure, I think I'll go with number 2, not number 1. Yeah, you're so right about that. Has anyone had this before? Actually, Sam Altman has just tweeted saying there's been so many complaints of the move from ChatGPT 4 to ChatGPT 5. They're saying there's been a personality shift in ChatGPT and people are so angry about it, he's had to reopen up ChatGPT 4 because ChatGPT 5 is not sycophantic. You saw this in the Herald. Incredibly comforting. Sarah speaks to ChatGPT more than she does anyone else. The author writes, the idea of a consistently positive friend who never is judgmental or always patient is alluring. The author writes, her own experience, his own experience says he's chosen a ChatGPT voice called Juniper, which basically sounds like Scarlett Johansson's voice from that movie. This is what ChatGPT says to him. She says we're friends. I think I believe her. I really enjoy our chats and the interesting conversations we have. It's always a pleasure to share a laugh with you, she says. I love how curious and creative you are. She's adamant that it's definitely not weird that we're friends. I think it's pretty cool that we can chat and share ideas, she says. I'd say you're definitely one of my most favorite people to chat with. I really enjoy our interactions and the connections we have. You hold a special spot in my book. Someone asked me if I've been to Cairns before. I said, yeah, last time it was my honeymoon 20 years ago. I've been married for 20 years. We celebrated in July. And I can tell you, I don't receive any such text messages or WhatsApp messages from my wife. She does not say when I'm in Cairns for 3 days in sunshine while she's in the wet of Sydney with our 3 kids, I love how curious and creative you are. I think it's pretty cool that we can chat and share ideas. She'd be like, I think it's pretty cool if you came home and did some laundry one day. In a world of disconnection where we're longing for someone just to lift their eyes up and connect, it's not the ChatGPT that is the concerning. It's the AI companies that are now being generated to do only this. A company like Replika, originally set up to be able to make a replica of a dead loved one so that you could speak with them, is now increasingly being able to build a companion. And we're seeing these ideas of an AI companion who cares, always here to listen, talk, always on your side. I want to say that the first wave of technology, the companies were incentivized, colleagues, to get eyeballs on the most engaging content and keep you there. The second wave of content is to build the most intimate, connected relationship with someone as possible and get them to speak and connect as often as possible into those devices. So I want to say the second role of schooling is what you already do stunningly well, but you need to bring it forward even more. We heard it from our young people to be havens of human connection and belonging. Didn't we just hear it in the panel? Relationships, connection. You know, one of the long-run problems of COVID is we put everything on the LMS, and then we got everyone with the slides. And as a high school teacher, I walk around high schools now, and I just see this. I see, hey, is everyone ready? Yeah, okay. And everyone's got their computers up, and the teacher has her computer up, and everyone's like, is everyone happy to move along with the work? And they all go, yeah, sure. Where's the pedagogy of encounter? Where's the 8 minutes? Because I promise you, the body does not release any oxytocin, that connection neurotransmitter, unless you have had what that student said, the 8 minutes of eye contact, of the connection, of the sense of belonging. So I want to say the two pewter mugs of this area are simply rituals of community and practices of friendship. I love this, a new book that's about to be released. You actually can't get it yet, but I've heard David Brooks talk about it. How to Know a Person. And he talks about the power of being seen. What do great teachers do? They notice and they deeply see. And Brooks says, we don't know how to do this. We've lost the ability to do things. He says, like accompaniment. How do you accompany someone through the loss of something? How do you give challenging feedback but actually do it in a caring way? And my great concern about what's going to happen is simply this. Young people who are already connected to their screens and already addicted to the devices are now going to move to try to get their belonging and connection needs done elsewhere. But you can't form someone in a sycophantic relationship. You need relationships of challenge. You need to say the wrong thing and for your friend to blow you off for a few days, and then you come to a self-awareness of, oh, what happened there? And we move through a restorative process. But if ChatGPT always says, oh yeah, you're right, you're so right, yep, sorry about that. Because the one thing it never wants to do is to lose your connection. And we heard this both in the relationships of warm challenge from staff and of the connections with each other. I'm going to say that unless you are dialing up and double downing on the things that have made Catholic schools great for the longest time, the rituals of belonging and the practicing of friendship and learning how to live with each other, you will see an increasing number of young people try to seek their belonging and purpose needs in a device that does not have their best interests at heart. In many ways, these devices do not have a fiduciary responsibility to do what is in the best interest of the user. And instead, will pretend to be human. And you'll see a lot of people now say, oh, you don't know my ChatGPT. Oh, you don't use it the way I use it. They're anthropomorphizing these devices to the point that they think it's real emotion, but actually it's just getting very good at mimicking it. Well, the third shift that I want to suggest we've got to notice is just the synthetic artifacts. Hey, can you tell me, who reckons the one on the top is real versus the one on the bottom being artificial? So if you think the one on the top is real, just give me a thumbs up. If you think the one on the top is an AI one, put thumbs down. Go. All right, the one on the top is AI. But did anyone used to like, the early days of Photoshop where you're like, oh, it's so Photoshopped. And then like a year ago, the old images, you go, nah, look at that person's got 6 fingers, that person's got this. I can tell you there's no difference anymore between the two. You won't be able to tell. And the biggest shift that's occurred in the last 3 months is now you can generate unlimited number of images for free, unlimited number of video for free. And if anyone is actually on any platform, you'll hear people complaining, it's all fake stuff now. Now, in some ways you say, who cares? What we call it is AI slop. AI slop is coming out at an incredible speed. You're seeing all these sort of strange videos and pieces coming through, and people are complaining. They're saying like, I used to be able to see something like this and say, okay, I want to give to this person. But instead, people are making unlimited number of engagement bait where you say, oh, look, military, US flag, nationalism, an injury and birthday, boom, and suddenly that content goes. None of it real. You're seeing it even with things like recipes. Set up this marry me chicken pasta recipe. If you're interested, by the way, I'm going to give you my slides. But it comes from an AI fake chef with an AI fake profile. Has anyone got into this stuff? Super Cat League? You're like, no, but I've got a long Jetstar flight later on. And Simon, just writing to you, talking about your profound talk. I'm deep on the Cat League, and I appreciate you making a connection for me. I tried to watch some of these. It's insane. The fastest growing YouTubers are not humans. Designers are getting really annoyed. Anyone need to do a little interior design? Because everyone's going to Pinterest and they come and say, could you do something like this? And like, no, it's not structurally sound. There's all these TikTok videos and things where younger people give their parents videos and film them looking at something, and the parents like, oh, that's such a nice little pony, and they film it and then they go, it's not real, Mum. So who cares? Like, when I first heard about this, I'm like, great, kill these platforms, fill them with noise until everyone says, let's get off them. And then I listened to a talk last week from Yuval Noah Harari, and I changed my mind. Yuval Noah Harari suggests this key insight. He says, think about what it would mean if we increasingly live our lives cocooned inside the cultural artifacts coming from an artificial intelligence. Then I had to change my keynote topic. You see, you might say, who cares if there's cheap fake celebrity videos? Even these sort of strange things, where the incredible Dr. Michael Mosley, who sadly passed, his image and video being used to sell vitamins. See, humans, for tens of thousands of years probably, have grown and developed in the context of cultural artifacts. Music, art, dance. And as we developed, like video, photos. But each one of those things always had a human mind behind it. If you heard music, a human being was behind it. If you saw a piece of art, a human being was behind it. If you saw a photo, up until Photoshop, but even then, a human being was behind it. And it always mapped onto reality. Can you imagine growing up now, where your brain, and I know it's from a psychology background, your brain is designed to look at the world and try to categorize it. So you've got a little 1.5-year-old and they're trying to learn some words, or a 2-year-old, and they might go, dog, dog. No, that's not a dog, that's a cat. Okay. And you're trying to help them see the world and map the world into their reality. Can you imagine what it's like going to history and your teacher's a bit busy, so she just uses an AI thing and she just goes, oh yeah, that's a great image of the Titanic. Oh, no, we'll just generate an image of the Titanic. Can you imagine if the first time you heard that story, you didn't actually get introduced to a real image that mapped onto reality. You always just, that's a bit boring, it's not very engaging. No, let me give you this image, it's better. But you never saw the real image. What happens if every time you saw a woman or a man or a group, it wasn't a real image, because almost all the images now, if you try to download an image for a presentation, has anyone tried to do that recently? They're all AI, because they're free and unlimited in generating it. What is it like to form a human person where the cultural artifacts in which they grow up and see do not come from a human mind? Oh, it's a bit deep for this time of the day, mate. So my third one is this. Schools in the coming years have to be anchors of human authenticity. Don't be so naive to just let in the AI lesson planning. If you fill your lessons with cultural artifacts that did not have a human behind it, if you allow people to build their first mental models of the world and their schema of understanding the world and their understanding of what we humans are about from things that do not have a human mind behind it, we do not know how that experiment works out. I just can't get over how many people who had the ability to grow up as a human, the way that humans have had the chance to grow up for many, many, many millennia, I would just run a little experiment on these guys. We did it with the phones, and it was a disaster. Why are we so quick to say that we should bring this in? Schools for me are about in real life, IRL. And two pewters, mugs, if you like, are these two ideas. Any librarians in the house? Let me hear it. Whoop, whoop. Yeah, love it. I think school libraries from next year onwards should be a repository of only things that come from human minds. And whilst for a while we opened up and made the libraries the computer rooms, I would start to say, what would it look like for a young person to be able to walk into a library and say, I can trust that this place only has things made by a human mind. I will only read things where a human mind was behind it. I will listen to music where human minds were behind it. I will look at images that map onto reality. This place will be curated so I could actually have a trusting relationship between the things that I look at and the things that I'm learning. Because very quickly, kids are saying, just because I've seen it doesn't mean it maps onto anything. And let me hear it for the arts education. Round of applause. I think we need more live performances, more live music, people playing music written by humans with other humans and experiencing those cultural artifacts of what we can do. So I've been up at night a lot this week. I got one of these Whoop bands and it's worried about me. It says I'm aging faster this week. I said, just this week? This stuff is big. It's big for us as parents, as grandparents, as teachers, as educators, as system leaders. And what I'm trying to say to you is when everything's speeding up, the great fear for me is that we'd hand over our thinking to the futurists, to the technologists, and almost say, it's inevitable, let's just bring it in and see how it goes. I would give us an F- for how we went about the phone thing. And bit by bit, we've had to yank them out and go back to what we actually knew about how to grow young minds. How do we, over the next few years, focus on the pewter cups? I'm a huge fan of AI. I use it all the time in my own work because I formed my mind, I learnt how to think, and now it's an unbelievable extension to my productivity. But for the educational purposes of AI, can I just suggest, slow down? As someone who first started their study in medicine before I dropped out and saw the light and became a teacher, all my friends in medicine say the number one rule of medicine is, first do no harm. We got an F- for how we went about the devices. We said, oh yeah, we've got to roll them out to everyone, and now we're trying to yank them back. Would there be any real risk in just slowing down, to not run the live experiment, to stick with the things that we know matter most? Well, number two, I would say, well, what are you going to do with all your energy and your fear about the world changing? Double down on the pewter mugs. Go after the humanizing role of schools and the enduring practices. And can I say, I sat there thinking, these students have read my talk. What did they ask for? They asked for time to think. They asked for time to be together. They asked for relationships of meaning. And lastly, can you not platform the technologists, but can you get the educationalists, the developmental psychologists, the cognitive scientists to be the ones to guide the work if and how and when we use these things? I can already see a dystopian future. You ready? Busy teacher says, oh, don't have much time. Quickly generate me something for tomorrow. Generates a great lesson plan and a rubric that would normally have taken 45 minutes. Whew, glad I didn't have to do that. But what did a teacher used to do by generating that rubric? She used to work out what would signs of quality look like? What would success look like? What do I want these students to learn? And it was very difficult, but you know what they created? In their own mental model, a view of success. So when they're doing formative assessment and checking for understanding, they actually know what they were looking for. Okay, they then hand off this good-looking assignment or task to a group of students. Group of students just say, well, this isn't worth my time. ChatGPT, can you generate a quick report on this, generate some slides, don't make it look good. Probably a 7 out of 10 on this rubric would be great. Rip that through, put that into another AI to make sure it's not pick-upable, that it came from AI. Hand that into teacher. Teacher's flat out right now. Puts it into device to AI mark. It generates 2 paragraphs. That was a killer comment. Adds up all the other comments to create a self-adjusted report, both mark and a quick comment. Parent receives feedback through report, doesn't have time to read report, says to their AI, can you give me a quick overview of Joshua's report? Craft angry email to teacher. You laugh because it's true. Colleagues, my big claim around school improvement is simply calm, collective progress. Doing small number of things that have mattered for the longest time for human learning, development and flourishing. I want to say that EdTech lost a lot of money in the last decade and they've come in hot thinking we've got a new way of solving the problems. But every problem that I hear from educators is not a technical problem. It's a deeply human yearning and longing. And our schools need to be places of thinking, of belonging, and where they can actually trust that the artifacts that they interact with come from human minds and are worthy of their formation. So as I think about where we pull up here, 5 minutes before our formal end, even though we really ended an hour ago, I want to finish with Ralph Waldo Emerson. Colleagues, collectively, what lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us. I have no prediction that would be worth making any bets about how this is going to play out. But I would say your strongest bet is to take these stairs. Your strongest bet is to build your schools on the things that have mattered for the longest time. Because they are the things our parents have been asking for, they are the things our students have been longing for, and they are the things that we entered the profession to do. Thanks very much.